Hi everybody, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash. This is Spencer.
Not from Knitting the Stash.
He's from Meta Spencer. You might have seen his videos on YouTube. But we're here with episode 141 of the...
141.
Of the Knitting Cast. So we're focused on knitting, remember that. I mean, we're going to talk about building a little bit, but you know...
All knitting, all the time.
That's right.
Yarn.
It's so sweet. You're so supportive of my
Knitting's
knitting
the
endeavors.
best.
I hope I'm supportive of your building endeavors.
Oh yeah.
I think so.
You'll be out there holding some trim later today.
Oh, good. So we just got back from our long Sunday walk. It's not really a long Sunday walk because we take long walks pretty much every day.
It was a little longer than we normally go, though.
It was a couple hours today, and it was a little chilly on the way back. So we're like thawing out in the warm house. Thank goodness. See, Spencer's still wearing a t-shirt because it's hot in here. We got our heating system up. For those of you who have missed a couple episodes, we were without heat, and then we got heat. So
like lobsters in a pot.
It's been kind of hot around here. So anyway, today's episode is about being on trend or not on trend. I've seen a lot of
So wait,
trend
was
reports.
that on trend or not on trend?
Right. Sorry, shouldn't have pointed at you. I'm usually the one that's totally not on trend. So
Out of date versus up to date.
we're pretty much out of date, I think.
A little bit.
You're a little more up to date actually than I am.
I don't know.
Anyway. We've seen a lot of trend reports coming out, especially after the new year, where it's like, okay, what's the new fashion going to be for like spring or summer?
We talk about trends.
Or, you know, yeah, but we have some things to talk about because I'm not a trendy person, so.
Well, okay, we'll talk
about it. And then I am also taking a little break from sweaters. So I have a blanket on the needles, which I mentioned in the last cast a few weeks ago. I've had some work craziness. I had to be out of town for a couple of weeks, living on my own. You know, it was... You had to be on your own too. You're taking care of the dogs and the cats and the heater. And anyway, we've had a little trial in tumultuousness. So I haven't exactly been like sweater knitting so much as like popcorn knitting. So I'll show you the blanket that I've been working on, which is now, I think, almost big enough to cover both of us. And
There's a few sweaters worth of yarn in that blanket.
Yeah, we'll talk about, destashing and using stuff that way. Anyway.
But before that, Melissa's going to tell you about her website and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Always do that at the beginning?
Yeah. Okay, I always forget. So... If you're looking for me, I'm Knitting the Stash everywhere, as most of you know. So that's Ravelry and Instagram and YouTube, obviously. And over on the website, which is knittingthestash.com.
Patreon.
Oh, there's Patreon and Ko-fi, and oh my god, like the list goes on. It's kind of crazy.
Knitting the Stash everywhere.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you who have been supporting over on Ko-fi and Patreon. I really appreciate it. It's like it keeps things running around here in terms of the mailings and the giveaways and the new equipment and all that stuff. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And you can find him at Meta Spencer.
Same thing, everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay, so since we're sitting in the yarn room and we're talking about being on trend, you seem to have you were like ready to go there a minute ago.
Oh, I was just thinking about that term trendy, which I think is derogatory. It's like a negative thing.
Trendy? To be somebody who is trendy?
It's dismissive, isn't it?
Oh, that's interesting.
If something is a trend, that's one thing, but if something's trendy, I think it means that it's...
Like a fad?
Yeah, faddish, superficial, short-term.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
All that kind of stuff.
That's pretty interesting.
I tend to think that trends are kind of dismissed in that way, but they're also like the lifeblood of fashion and so many things.
But they are kind of like a drop in like a flash in the pan. Is that the right? I always mix my metaphors, but like flash in the pan, like they happen for like the spring of 2023 and then they're gone by, you know, I've also heard that fashion is kind of moving at an even more rapid rate. Like it used to be, there were like 4 seasons, you know, winter, spring, summer, and fall, and now there's like 52 seasons because they change every week.
Just
like it's
constantly.
Like this kind of constant
That's why I got
churn.
this new t-shirt.
It's a nice new t-shirt.
Gotta keep up with stuff, you know.
I have an old sweatshirt that I got from Goodwill about 15 years ago. So most of my clothes are from about 15 years ago.
Well, that could be a trend too.
The trend of...
trends are not always new things.
No,
but they're like recycling. You probably see that a lot with yarn and knitting.
And that would have been nice if like I had gone to Goodwill with the intent of buying something that was going to be like the new trend of using the old vintage thing. But,
so do you see like cycles of trends? You know, like I always think of like the worm hat was a trend at one point when I was knitting hats.
That one's finally kind of slipped off the top radar, I feel like, of the Ravelry feed.
But then do they kick back in and they come back around?
So I'm really curious, especially for those of you who have been knitting longer than me. I've been knitting since like 2012. Ravelry kind of started up in 2007, 8, you know, that was kind of that. So I'd be curious for those of you who have been knitting longer, you know, a couple of decades, have you seen things come and go? Because I feel like it's a lot of times you have to see it over a couple of decades. I feel like I've got 1 decade in me.
Of knitting.
And I feel like, of knitting, yeah. No, I'm really just a decade old. Just 10 years.
It just sounded weird. I just want to clarify.
I'm a middle-aged person who's 10. So, I mean, I think looking back historically, like the knitting books, like I collect a lot of knitting books from eBay and garage sales and things like that. And you do see trends that way. Like if you're looking at pattern books or you're looking at stitch dictionaries or things like that, like things come and go and then they come back into fashion, like ideas about which stitches are cool or what kind of sweater or something like that. So I think there are definitely waves on the trendometer. But I guess what interests me too is like I talked to you all about my favorites on Ravelry last time and how I went through and kind of cleaned stuff out. But I'm often someone who will just knit something because I like it. Like I'm not someone who wants, and there's no shade on anyone who does like to keep up with the latest patterns. I think that's cool too. It's a very interesting way of keeping your knitting mojo going. But I'll go back to like my favorites from like 2000 and find things from like 2007 or 2000 or old, people do vintage stuff. But I'm talking about like off-trend stuff, like stuff that's no longer like, oh, everybody's knitting it,
But don't you think the current fashion and what's cool still informs those choices? Like you're not grabbing some kind of 70s-esque funky out-of-date thing.
I don't know that stuff goes that out of date for me, at least. And on the
With
Zoom,
patterns.
Yeah, and on the Zoom it was really great. We have Jean's on the Zoom, and she
this is your weekend thing you do.
Yeah, on Saturdays.
Okay.
And she wore a sweater yesterday. She's worn it before, but it's a sweater that was from a 1980s Vogue knitting magazine, and she told the story of carrying that magazine with her for like a decade or more. No, it was more than that. I think it would have been 2 or 3 decades.
Finally knitting it.
Finally learning how to knit and knitting that sweater. And then it's a cool sweater. Wow. Like it's very not on, I don't know if it's on trend or not, but it's a cool sweater from like the 1980s. So some people would say, oh, that's like really out of date. Or some people would say, oh, it's back.
Yeah.
The 80s are back. The 90s are back,
Yeah.
But I think it's just...
So there aren't clear demarcations of what's necessarily contemporary or trendy or
maybe
whatever.
I don't know, but I do see trends. Like you probably see this too in building.
Shipping container buildings.
Right, that's like
bus renovations.
The new the things you do. You're a little more trendy.
Well, so I renovated a bus a few years ago, and I didn't know it was a trend. I didn't know it was happening. Like I thought I invented it.
Was it like you drank the Kool-Aid though? Like you didn't know that you did know?
No, I just found a bus and bought it. I just found a bus, bought it, renovated it, and found out that it was like a thing.
Okay.
So it was a trend that I was kind of unaware of.
That's what, but I kind of wonder about that kind of stuff. Like it's in the water.
Maybe it just
you didn't know.
But with the shipping container building that I'm building right now, it's something that's already a trend, and I just kind of liked them, and I thought I'll just do it.
Right.
I sort of sometimes I want to be cool and not participate in something trendy. I want to do something really off the.
But not in a hipster-esque kind of way?
I don't know. Maybe.
Because the hipsters have done that. They took what was not cool and made it cool.
Yeah.
And now there's like, I don't know if the hipsters are cool anymore.
Sometimes I just simply don't want to be trendy. I want to do something that other people aren't doing. And my creative juices just want to flow that way.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always challenging myself. But other times it's like, you know what? People are doing this and...
It's cool.
It's cool.
There's something about it that's fun and interesting.
Yeah. Like those worm hats. I thought they looked good, so I figured out how to make one. Mine was a little bit weird.
But you had a cool worm hat.
I couldn't figure out how to do the top or...
Oh, the top was...
Or maybe I lined it. No, the top was easy. I lined it with a kind of felty thing.
And it kind of...
And it was hanging out.
The fabric a little bit.
And then it got real tight.
But you did it. You're interested.
How do you line a hat without it getting
In the comments, people, help him.
I put like felt in there.
Well, a lot of people would
it was like putting a bucket on your head.
Okay, a lot of people would pick up stitches and in either a slightly smaller yarn and slightly smaller needles, and you knit like the same version, and then you kind of tuck it up.
But then it's wool on your head again.
I know you want
something soft.
So, if you have suggestions for sewing, which I can't do, but he likes to do,
I'm thinking maybe fleece, something a little more elastic.
Yeah. Anyway, so. Back to trends.
We were a little bit
you get a lot of topic there.
I'm like, if anyone has an idea.
Like, remember that worm hat that I needed help with? I've just been really curious about, I do see these trend reports coming out from other podcasters and knitters and people who are more in the fashion industry.
About knitting
About what's going to be on trend for
knitted stuff.
2023, like what you're gonna see.
Wow.
And I think to myself of like the designers I know and like myself as a very
They must pay attention to that
tiny little
stuff.
designer, like I mean I'm guessing people pay attention to it's like colors, it's fabric choices, it's like, and I know we've all seen the rise and fall of like different things, like oh in this, you know, now all of a sudden we're gonna all do I don't know, like ruched stuff or like sleeves that have the poof or like you know, like there are certain things that you start seeing in patterns, like oh everybody has the poof sleeve, like the puff sleeve, which was an Anne of Green Gables thing. I think it was Anne of Green Gables. She was like, she had those? Really want the sleeve with the
Did she get it?
I don't remember if she got it or not. I think
she's pretty cool.
Did. Maybe she made it. Anyway.
Yeah,
you all know the reference.
But those trend reports, you sort of, if you're a designer or a maker, you know, usually kind of pay attention to that stuff.
But I wonder, I always think about these things like chicken and the egg. Like the trend report pretends sometimes to be about like what's happening and pushing fashion.
Right.
But I often think of those trend reports as like setting the trend for the...
Or it's already, if it's in the trend report, no one creative is going to do it.
Yeah, because it's already been done.
It's not.
No one creative is going to do it. Interesting.
Well, like truly original. You know, like
interesting.
Like someone who's doing new stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's no. I'm not throwing shade. I'm really just thinking. No. I'm really just thinking. Like, so what does that actually mean? Like, we have these hierarchies of value in terms of like what's cool, what's on, you know, like what's creative, what's unique, and it's, you know, for different people it's different things. But then you get these kind of larger social shifts or larger social kind of like cultural pushes towards certain things.
Okay, so I have a question for you about trends. It's like when you ask
for me or for everybody.
For you.
Okay.
Everybody can answer the question too, but this question's for you.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I'm like, where's my group? Where's my crew?
So if trends exist over here, the antithesis might be timeless things, timeless designs or whatever.
Nice.
Do you guys ever think about that? Like I want to knit something timeless.
Yeah.
Or I want to, like for the new grandbaby, knit something timeless.
Wow, I don't think of grandbabies quite that way. I will knit the new grandbaby something.
I do because I feel like a baby blanket.
Sure.
It's just
they change over time though. Yeah,
okay.
I think so. But the timeless thing, I think there are some designers that I know that, you know, we've both looked at on Ravelry who do kind of like just make the like what we would think of as like classic, like I think t-shirt and jeans, kind of like sweatshirts or like not sweatshirts, sweaters that, you know, are just they're single color. They
doesn't look of the moment.
They're not of the moment. They're just kind of like the lines, the cut. It's kind of like it's something that you've seen over and over and over again. But they've done something a little, you know.
And they do it well. And maybe it's a readable pattern. It's workable. It's knittable.
And oftentimes it's not. It doesn't involve a lot of colors because colors really do change with the season and with the fashion and stuff. So they're often like single color,
simple gray
and
sweater,
a simple kind of like set-in sleeve,
so it's
or
timeless.
A simple. Yeah, it's just it doesn't.
It's not really timeless though, but
it's not readable on the
at
spectrum
least the next
of the
couple.
trends.
Whatever,
it seems kind of. But you're right. It's not going to be timeless. Because you know, if we look back even at, you know, people who do vintage patterns, you're like, whoa, that is some different fit, different cut, different.
Or like those
everything.
old Gansey sweaters from the 1920s or whatever. Come on.
Yeah. And I'm looking at a pile of books over there. I keep looking at this, like, I have this old pile of old pattern books, not even that old, from Knit Picks and other places that are probably from 2014, 2012, something like that. And they feel a little outdated already.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting, like, the ways that this industry gets pushed. And I've heard other designers talking about the fact that there was this move, and I don't know if you all saw it, maybe it was a year ago during the pandemic, for designers to say, why should we keep having to put out a new pattern every month rather than like revisiting all the patterns we've already done and like embracing them and saying like, you know.
Isn't there an answer for that this stuff's for sale?
Yeah.
That's the way
it's like it churns.
I mean, I know like in the tree work industry, among arborists and tree workers, there are trends that are often associated with like production habits, but also gear and equipment.
Yeah.
And the gear and equipment stuff, you know, it's a speed lining is the practice, but the speed line kit is the thing you buy.
Right.
And speed lining was like really trendy for a while.
So everybody bought the kit.
And everyone's speed lining stuff, they don't necessarily need to be speed lining because it's, you know, it's like it's a trend,
Yeah.
but it's also like a product and
Yeah.
it's promoted and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot in the knitting world in terms of products, especially with yarn. I mean, that's the obvious one, but also in terms of like the books you need or the type of needles you need or something like that. Like some of the equipment stuff does.
But I feel like knitting is pretty chill in terms of cost output for a basic setup.
I think so.
Needles and the gear you need to get going.
Yeah, I think if you kind of like pay attention to that and kind of keep it, manageable, it does make sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't know about trend. What we know, we've just spewed into the internet. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's interesting. But
is the blanket you're knitting a trendy design?
No,
it's not. It's not like the new happening.
There are some trendy blankets, and people do make trendy blankets. Hexapuff? Yes,
I love that.
That was
blanket.
Huge trend. Yeah.
Did it sort of poop out?
I haven't seen much of it lately.
Okay. It's such a cool blanket, though.
This blanket
this
is
one's
just
not
basic. It's like a basic stripy blanket. I mean, this is something that like anyone could do with any of the yarn that they have out there, and it's getting quite big actually.
And it's stockinette?
It's a garter.
Oh, it's garter stitch.
Yeah, it's just knitting. You're knitting the whole time. Knitting back and forth, switching your yarn. This one is, I forget the name.
You mean to hold it up?
Yeah, you want to hold it up. So this is the Make a Long Story Short blanket is how it started. But the Make a Long Story Short blanket is not what this actually is for a bunch of different reasons. I mod everything.
So there is a pattern or whatever.
Yeah, there is a pattern, but I didn't follow it. So, I mean, kind of. So, number one, she knits the pattern with fingering weight yarn held single, just a single fingering weight yarn.
Okay.
I held it double. I started with singles, and then my Zoom group was like, that's a lot of knitting and fingering weight yarn. So
I feel like you also did a different
edge
because it was kind of bunching or something.
It wasn't turning. I didn't want to have to do pick up and do a finishing edge on the whole blanket.
You just wanted to knit it and be done.
I wanted to knit it and be done, and I felt like the pattern, which is a really awesome pattern, and I will follow it in terms of the basic shaping of the blanket, didn't give me like a nice edge. So I love this edge. Let's see if it'll show up here.
What's the deal? It's got little holes there.
It has a little bit of it's got a little bit of a pattern to it. Basically, she was switching yarn on the edge. So on one edge, it looked kind of clean. On the other edge where you were switching yarn, like picking up the next color, you ended up with this. It just didn't look neat because it was always happening on the edge. So I moved everything in.
So you go to the edge, you turn it, and then you pick up your new yarn.
So like this is where you can see here, this is where I'm picking up the two strands of yarn. So two strands here are being held together, and then these two strands are being held together. And so what I'm doing is I'm slipping the first stitch purlwise with the yarn in front, which is not part of the pattern. And that creates this really nice slipped stitch edge. So you get this stitched edge right along here, so it's nice and smooth. And then I'm doing my increase, which is the knit front and back. And I'm saying all this because it is a free pattern, so I'm not giving anything away from a designer who needs to be paid for their... Every designer should be paid for their work, but this is a free pattern that she's put out there. So after I do the slip, then I do a knit one front and back, one stitch in, like that is in the pattern. And then I pick up my other yarn and start knitting across. So my other yarn is always being picked up like 2 or 3 stitches in on the blanket edge. So the edge itself I'm controlling, and then I'm switching the yarn.
Do you ever think all that stuff is maybe not necessary? You could have just done it the way...
If you want a nice edge, man, sometimes...
It just sounded kind of fiddly. It was like, I really need to do it this very specific way.
I really love this edge.
You like it this way.
And you can see down here at the very
better.
beginning, I tried something different, and it produced a little bit of an extra bump in the yarn.
You didn't dig it.
And I didn't dig it, so I just went back to my just straight up. I really...
It just sounded highly technical.
Like the way that the yarn is being carried up the edge, and then I do the same thing on the other side. Slip one purlwise with the yarn in front, and then knit one front and back, and then keep going across.
It just sounds like you've always got these little things like, I want the collar to be a certain way. The armpits have to be just...
It's
my short rows, I like the German, not the Austrian.
I just want something to be, like, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's a technique that makes me happy.
Like
if you're going to do it over and over again for a huge blanket...
You're going to make a blanket. You're going to have some edge that you're not happy with.
Yeah. Now, people have asked about color management with this blanket, because it is...
It's got every color in the rainbow.
Got every color in the rainbow. But there is a little bit of color management going on in that I'm trying to
How do you do that?
kind of shift things. So since I'm carrying 2 yarns double, you can at any point snip out one of those 4 colors and add in a new color. And so you're always kind of shifting.
So it's a little more purpley, and then a little more
neon.
bluey.
And then down here it's a little more sunrisey. So
I haven't seen the black stripe yet.
There was some black back here.
There was some
and it got a little too dark. So I decided to switch it out. So,
Okay.
But it's a cool blanket in that once I get it wide enough, and it's pretty close to being wide enough now, depending on what you want to do with it.
Queen size.
Yeah, that's what you want. It might be bigger.
Big.
Then she has this cool way in the make a long story short blanket. You know, right now basically you're doing like a shawl. You're just increasing from the point out. And then once you get it wide enough, you'll bias
Turn.
it. And so that it'll go straight.
Okay, so
like biased
hold on.
straight.
So right now, each time you get to the edge, you increase.
Right. So
Increase,
it's kind
increase,
of, it's
increase,
gonna make
increase.
this.
And then finally you get to this corner,
Right.
and
When
this
it's big
side is
enough,
going to decrease,
then
but
you're
this side's
gonna-
going to keep increasing?
Yes. So one side's going to decrease and one side's going to, so you're going to go on the bias. But because this is already a triangle, the bias is actually going to be like this.
Sounds biased.
And then the triangle will close at the top.
At the top,
You'll do that.
You'll
You'll do
bind
decreases
off?
on both sides.
oh, you'll do decreases,
To
but
get
you're
to the
already
other
decreasing
corner.
over here. Oh, so you'll never just bind off along the edge.
No.
You just get to the corner.
Yep. And that'll be it. You'll get down to 3, like whatever it is, 3 stitches in the corner, and that'll be the end.
Oh,
It's really that part of the pattern
Cool.
is really a cool design. I just
Good.
wanted to work with the edges and do it with a
You gotta tweak it a
holding
little
the
bit.
fingering weight yarn double.
And she's been sewing her ends in, weaving them in all the way along.
That's the other thing.
There's been hella ends everywhere.
Yeah.
It's been like ended out.
And for the most part, they're sewn in. I've got a couple left over at the
I
top.
think
Like
you did it all.
I've got one left here that it just
Yeah.
kind of happened.
Just burn that off.
But the thing about this is I'm using up all my superwash yarn. Maybe not all my superwash yarn, but as much superwash yarn as I can possibly pull out of my stash.
So it's a suit.
So the superwash yarn doesn't weave in as well as like a woolly because it doesn't
grab.
felt.
Can you just
know.
knot it?
So you can see I've got right now with it's you can see the
Oh,
ends
yeah,
are kind
there's
of
a
working
few.
their way back out in a couple places, so I'll have to go back in.
As long as you have
and
enough
leave a little
of an
snippy.
end. You leave a few inches.
I usually try to at least weave an inch in.
We recommend a
superwash
few
yarn.
inches for your ends here on
Superwash
Knitting the Stash.
especially. Yeah.
And I recommend knots. But
Just
it doesn't
yeah,
seem
don't
like
listen.
anyone.
This is not what we
just
should do.
tie it off.
Yeah. But I think it's cool because it does produce this drapey kind of marley effect with
That's
the
great.
yarn held in double in 2 different strands, and
I
just
think it would be
something
really
pretty about
cool to do a blanket like this and then cut it up and make a sweater out of it.
oh, see
You know?
that's sewing.
Like, use it as. Well, no, it's knitting. You knitted it.
Sewing.
It just seems like a good.
Mean
good
sewing.
fabric.
Well, maybe someday I'll just give you this fabric and you can just do what you want with
Oh
it.
yeah. I'd screw it up so bad.
Oh, you
Debbie
poor
could do it.
thing. Debbie could do it. Debbie would.
Or Beth.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got some.
Any of the ladies,
sewing
my spinning
buddies who
ladies,
could do
who
it.
could totally do it. Yeah. So this is
So it's not a trend,
not a trendy blanket.
but it could become a trend.
I think it's really a fun blanket because I've had some crazy work stuff, and
Yeah.
when I come home at night, all I want to do is sit there with like knit.
therapeutic.
Knit.
Yeah.
Like that is why this blanket has gotten so big. I mean, it's like it's freaking huge at this
Yeah.
point. It's probably a blanket
Satisfying.
size.
It's just
at
very
this point.
satisfying.
How wide is it?
It's getting
we
there.
at-
I
are we
wouldn't
at
call
4
it big
feet?
enough yet.
Okay, wait here. Let's do the tape measure and just see.
Alright, here we
Take
go.
that end.
I think 48 inches. I don't know.
Oh, I want it to be 48 inches. What are we at? Oh my gosh. This is the moment. We're at
45
46 inches.
You want it to be 48?
I think
That's your goal?
48. Haha.
Alright.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh. I'm almost ready to go. Turn it
You could
and
have
go
measured
on the...
as you went along, you know.
No, it's more exciting to just kind of randomly do
Be
it on the
surprised.
podcast and
Be
be surprised. Like, hey, I only have 2 more inches to go. And so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. And
I
it'll
think
be
I
warm.
might have dropped the needle I was holding at the end.
That's okay. I mean, we don't need a blanket like this in our house, so I don't know what we're going to do with it.
It's just good to have a throw blanket.
Maybe when the power goes out.
I got some ideas.
Yeah? We
Yeah.
could take it camping.
It's like an outdoor, you know, on the deck.
Oh, by the fire. Yeah, like if we're out doing like a fire night or
Is
something.
it fireproof?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can
maybe
spray
not with
it.
the fire.
Spray some stuff.
Spray it. It's flammable.
Waterproof it.
No. I mean, the wool is fire resistant, but superwash wool,
So
I
you guys
think, would
don't
melt.
spray. You don't spray your sweaters with waterproofer.
Ooh.
Like I do my work
Now
stuff.
that's a whole nother episode. I think.
We'll do that. We could do
Spray a
that.
sweater down with waterproof and
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, silicone spray.
Again, in the comments. people,
Silicone
please
spray.
Share with us.
I'm
what
sure
you
people
think.
do that.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the
Silicone.
cast with your silicone. spray. We're not on
put
trend.
some ideas out there. They might work out, they might not.
Definitely not on trend. And we're fine with that for the most part. You might be.
You
want to be on trend. Oh, jeez. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you in the next episode.
Meta Spencer on YouTube.
Bye.
I didn't know his name for the whole thing. I think I messed it up probably.